In this video, I'll show you how to make oven-roasted spaghetti squash, a seasonal low-histamine pasta alternative that's naturally gluten-free and full of flavor. You'll learn how to get tender, perfect strands every time, plus a few well-tolerated toppings to make these spaghetti squash boats your own. Let's get into it. Hi, this is Max from lowhistamineeats.com, where we make and share histamine-friendly recipes. Spaghetti squash like this 4-pound monster makes for a great low-carb swap for pasta. And when roasted just right, it turns into golden, slightly sweet strands that pair beautifully with herbs, cheese, or just your favorite sauce. Start by preheating your oven to about 400 degrees Fahrenheit or 205 Celsius. Then grab your spaghetti squash and start cutting. I'm using a particularly large one, but smaller ones will cook only about 5 to 10 minutes faster. Carefully cut it in half lengthwise using a sharp knife, which in this case took 2 or 3 minutes due to its immense thickness, and scoop out the seeds and any stringy bits with a spoon. You can save the seeds to roast later on or just discard them, but you can already see the spaghetti-like quality inside as you start to scrape the inside bits out. You may need to redeploy your knife again a time or two, because if you keep scraping out the inside, more strands will come out, so just remove the bare minimum. Next, some people like to stab the inside of each squash half several times with a fork to even out the baking rate, though I tend to skip that these days. Then just drizzle about 2 tablespoons of olive or avocado oil over the inside of each half and rub it all over. If your squash is smaller, average it to about half a teaspoon of oil per pound of squash. Next, season each half evenly with about 1/4 teaspoon of each sea salt, garlic powder, dried oregano, and Italian seasoning, plus a pinch of sweet paprika if you like a bit of color. I'm doing 2 different flavors here, so use about 1/2 teaspoon of each spice if you're doing all the same flavor on a 4-pounder like mine. This other half is just salt and garlic, so I can do a pesto sauce on top. A good rule of thumb is about 1/2 teaspoon of seasonings plus a dash of salt per pound of squash. But some of you may like even more than that, depending on which and whether you're adding sauce. The evenness of the seasonings also isn't as important since you're going to fluff everything up into spaghetti strands after it's all baked, especially if you're going to put it onto a plate instead of eating it out of the spaghetti squash boat. Once seasoned, place the squash halves cut side up on a parchment-lined baking sheet or a lightly greased pan. I tend to just lightly oil the bottoms of each half and then put them onto a baking tray. Roast them in your preheated oven for about 50 to 60 minutes, depending on the size of your squash. You'll know they're ready when the flesh is tender and easily pierced with a fork, but the bottoms will get quite browned in the meantime. I like to check on them a few minutes early just to be safe. When it's done roasting, remove the squash from the oven and let it cool for a few minutes until it's safe to handle. Then using a fork, gently scrape the inside of each half to create those signature spaghetti-like strands, breaking up the thick layers of squash lining the skins, using the fork almost like a knife to cut through the layers. If you'd like to add sauce or cheese, now is the time. For a saucy version, add about a cup of your favorite sauce, then sprinkle on about a cup of mozzarella cheese. This is for every 4 pounds, so if using a smaller squash, scale that down. If you prefer the cheese on its own, just skip the sauce and go straight to the cheese. I'm using fresh mozzarella pearls here since the shredded cheese can bother some people with histamine issues. If you've also learned this the hard way, drop a comment below. The sauce you use can also really change the flavor of this dish. Like with other types of squash, these roasted spaghetti squash halves are only enhanced by the addition of sauce. My husband also always adds tomato sauce to his half, but some low histamine sauces to try include red pepper sauce, lemon basil pesto, my personal favorite, or a fresh herb chimichurri. Next, return the halves to the oven on convection mode if possible for another 15 to 30 minutes, toppings facing up, until the cheese is melted and lightly browned on top. This may take a bit longer if your oven's temperature is uneven or doesn't go that high. Once everything's melted and golden, let the squash cool for a couple of minutes, then serve it warm with a dollop of sauce or a sprinkle of fresh herbs. If you have leftovers, they'll freeze okay if scooped out into an airtight container, but the boat aspect of the halves is lost. Otherwise, anyone not eating low histamine in the household can enjoy it from the fridge for up to 3 days in an airtight container. And that's it. A simple, nourishing roasted spaghetti squash that's perfect as a main or a side. If you enjoyed this recipe, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more low histamine eats. Let me know in the comments what sauce you'd pair with yours, and I'll see you in the next video.